Okay, well, welcome to our little panel today. Um, so we've all just been having a discussion offline. We've been, I guess, sharing where this concept of the father wound sits for us in the context of our lives and in the collective. And really, to surmise our discussion, we've noticed that there is healing to do, and there is a coming together of the people, but there's a specific, particularly in our current times, with some social anarchy starting to ensue, and the sound of the planet's pain starting to rise and become more obvious, is that we're, looking to smoothen out the kinks in our nervous systems and our energetic bodies and our emotional bodies, centered in around the father wound. And, there's many aspects. But really getting clear on, I guess, what is the toxicity that is continuing or is allowed to continue from the father wound, and also what is some directional change, or what are some paths that, we all have perspectives on that could contribute to the energy of people moving towards the father wound for healing and developing a better relationships within themselves, within relationships with others, but specifically with the feminine. So, Christine, may I ask you, what is your personal experience with the father wound? Like something really, really specific. There doesn't need to be details that are, across a boundary line for you, but something that would create context for how your physical body and your emotional body actually interacts with the father wound in your own body.
Okay, so I've done a fair bit of work with healing my spiritual lineage, and therefore also the continuity of myself and the continuity of energy in the world as I'm able to navigate and move through the world. And I found that to be something that had been impeded on through my father line, through some of the mindsets and the wounding that my father has had, from some injuries and from programming and all sorts of things that he's been carrying, whether unconsciously or even semi-consciously. So for me, it's been about being able to be empowered, keep making those steps, actually take steps in the world that are in a logical way, constantly moving forward, and feeling connected with other people, like in a very authentic way. So it's also about that brotherhood feeling, I guess, as well. So I felt like my father always saw himself as being outside of the circle of love. For example, if we want to say, like, there's a circle of love, and he always considered himself perhaps outside of that. And so that just really ricocheted onto me. And I think I carried that energy on some level, on a soul level too. So there was just a way for me to see that and be like, okay, I don't want to choose that anymore. But there's been a lot of emotional and all sorts of shifting that needed to happen to make any of that possible, to move through any of that.
Yeah, beautiful. Does anyone else have anything coming up from that?
Definitely. I'm relating very much with the pattern, the emotion of at times feeling separate from being in that circle of love, and the healing that I've done in terms of my own father wound also comes into this place of feeling a sense of acceptance, and how powerful it feels, that feeling of father to a son or a daughter, to give praise and to feel really accepted and comfortable and loved in a family kind of way, and then that branches out into community, into society. So there's this sense of a healed father offering fatherly love, and physically and emotionally, it feels like that feeling of just almost like a bear hug. It's just like this hug, and it has so much strength to it, and it comes in physically. It comes into my core, and it has me feel powerful as a man. So that's part of what came up as you were sharing, Christine. It's, this feeling of being in the circle of love, and then really bringing that into the physical and feeling that in the core of my being.
Yeah, that acceptance, that bear hug, is such a huge piece. I feel that. I really feel that. Will, have you heard this statement before of like iron sharpens iron in men's work?
Yes.
Yeah. How do you sit with that statement?
Iron is such a powerful masculine, and it relates to me with the whole Knights of the Round Table and keeping your sword sharp, and how really men can initiate men into a path of wisdom, and this is an opportunity to strengthen the masculine. Iron sharpens iron. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's interesting. There's this bear hug element of brotherhood.
Yes.
Where everything about you can be loved, and the only other place that I've experienced that I've heard people experience that bear hug is sexually, when a mother wound and father wound actually get artistically worked together and allowed and explored, and you're sort of, you know, loving erotically the wound in some way, quite consciously, as part of other practices around opening to love elsewhere in your body and so on and so forth. But just the sort of almost opposing forces of the sharpening aspect of men's work, but then there's also this like loving acceptance bear hug, and how there's this beautiful duality that kind of exists between the two, and it kind of holds it together in both challenge and support. And so when I hear that, I hear of like there's a huge component of feminine work in men's work in order to still sharpen that edge, you know. And I feel I'm just sort of banging on about this a little bit because, you know, when we're looking to reframe that, you know, paradigm of, you know, what is healthy masculinity, I think being really honest on the front end in terms of men getting into men's work to be a more connected and more available, more loving human being. So much of the work is actually in accepting the feminine and figuring out how to accept that feminine. But the lure might actually be that their doorway or their gateway into that realm of possibility and curiosity about being a more embodied man can often come through the iron sharpens iron angle, because they don't feel enough, therefore they want more. There might be some minutia in their life, and that still promotes some kind of change into wanting to sharpen their edge with other men. And it's not completely based in shadow, but it's still based on men still following that warrior path. And I personally see the warrior path as like a ready state. So I think ready state in the context of you'll never really be ready. Like, it's a bit of an oxymoron. But the warrior rests as a warrior. Like, the warrior doesn't lie down on the couch. He doesn't check out. You know, he doesn't create leaky energy in his life. He actually rests in a pose that is the ready state, like a horse stance or something that reminds him that he has a long spine. That could be yoga. There's something that he's doing that's not outcome focused.
Yeah, I love that expression there, because I think that energy maintenance is so important to have clarity of the mind. And when I was speaking with Loke recently, I said that that was one of the most important things that I felt a man can do is meditate. But because he has then clarity of mind, and then you're bringing that into his ability to hold that physically and to actually stand in his energy and maintain that, and then be prepared for action. So that adds that extra piece onto it too.
Yeah, because a man has to ground really big energies in his physical body if he's to be more, you know. And maybe, Brandy, you can speak more specifically to the energies that come up for men that you see. But if a man's not being held in brotherhood and feeling supported at the same time, if he's not having other men sharpen his edge at the same time, then that physical body's not going to deal with anything energetically. It's either just going to leak out or not even penetrate in. So Brandy, do you have anything to speak to about the actual energies that you see men are being called to hold?
Yeah, some of the men that have been previously visiting me and coming to the workshops have been really working on acceptance of themselves, of their journey, of their truth, of what that they will allow into their lives. And the men that have been getting closer to the community here in Western New York, they're actually stepping out and supporting each other and supporting the women. There's not a whole lot of men that I've been in contact with because I had mostly been focusing on the sisterhood aspect and women's healing. But just within the last few years that I've been opening up my practice to more men, more whole families have been receiving the healing for their lineage, and tapping into these generational patterns that I've seen. We can track energy imbalances 3, 4, 5, 6 generations at least, to see whether the paternal side is holding the energetic breakage in the electrical circuitry, or whether there's like a coherence or a resonance. And so we're looking at both the maternal line and the paternal line. And
yeah. Can I just say that Brandy helped me with a session recently where we went back 10 generations on my masculine side. And there was just so much, it was like, just hit me like a train coming through of just so much information that had been locked up and perverted and twisted or shattered through that lineage. And so receiving all of that energy back again, 10 generations back from my fatherhood line has just been extremely transformative for my ability to be present and creative. Yeah, so thanks, Brandy, for that. It's amazing.
I absolutely love that. What we do to really find the root cause of the breakdown in electrical circuitry, it typically will be like miasmic patterning. So like a morbid distortion, or like I said, breakdown in electrical circuitry, tracking back through the holographic crystalline matrix of the human body field. So if you think in terms of like different layers of the aura, so we're going to like tap into all of those layers in the morphogenetic fields to find out where that root trauma or shock to the system or miasmic pattern, which could also be considered like a karmic debt on some level. So those miasms cause restriction, suppression. It can even become cancerous. So there's a lot of different types of miasmic patterning, and that was a term that was coined by the father of homeopathy, Dr. Heinemann. I think that was back in like the 1600s. Don't quote me on the time, but, or maybe it was the 1800s. Pericles must have been the 1600s, actually, now that I think about it. But yeah, so when we track back to those 10 generations, we're reading into the bones, the muscles, and the organs and finding out where it's crystallized or stagnated or become rigid or conscripted in the actual muscle memory of your being. So if there's like a trauma that's buried deep that could have happened 3, 4, 10 generations ago, you now could still be playing out those patterns and the processes that we've inherited through all of the generations down the line.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, can I just say that that's why I feel like this idea of the father wound is so important to heal, because it's a lineage. It's actually a lineage that men bring through. Like they are a part of what they're creating is a lineage moving forward as well. So then for men to look at the future and see the possibility of even continuing a lineage, I think that that is lost in a lot of ways at the moment. Like there's so much confusion and different streams of information coming in that men are really looking for the way to continue that lineage and how they're going to do it.
It's so powerful. I know there have been times in my life when I realized that my healing with my father was healing with his father and his father and his father's father, but it was also for sons and daughters and granddaughters and grandsons. And so each time I would come through another layer of healing, I would experience this multi-generational through both the past and into the future of healing that would take place. And the healing was that of a journey where I realized that I came into working with other men through strong women. It was an interesting dynamic. And I know when we were speaking in the last circle, that's something that Loki brought up, was this coming into working with strong women. And then there is this next step that comes into men working with men. And this place of, as Roscoe was mentioning earlier, iron sharpening iron, there's this place of men initiating men, so that we come out of this place of being wounded boys into becoming mature men on a wisdom path. And there's this place of impeccability. There's this place of healing the gut, and then it comes into the heart, and through meditation, the mind and the thoughts and the intentions, with this place of impeccable heart. And the impeccable heart really is this, as you were mentioning earlier, physically, it is like its horse stance. It's like in martial arts, is this place of preparedness. It's this place of speaking truth, of cutting through the bullshit and releasing the pain and healing the shame and the rage, and healing. It's almost like on the inside for men, it's healing the father-son relationship to that place where, as men, we can act as men with an impeccable heart.
Yeah, Will, man, I love that. There's so much I hear in that. That impeccable heart piece. I'm just going to sort of inject my movement lens for a minute. You know, a big thing that I notice for men, and you know, this is the masculine in women too. But you know, I have this sort of feeling that, like, you know, as men, we learn our way of showing up and our actions in the world via our fathers, and you know, we learn our way of loving and receiving from the mother or the mothers. And so when the body's moving, it's sort of got this, you know, premeditated way of moving, a certain amount of tension with each movement that may have been learnt from the father, with whatever rigidity he had, or whatever, you know, if we talk about sort of lineage, whatever non-availability his father had with his father, who was, you know, working through a depression, or you know, times of financial depression, or actual war and death and disease, and so, like, yeah, that being carried in every movement. So there needs to be this like softening. There needs to be this like almost like breaking of the glass in some way, of all the crystalline structures in a man's tissue, you know, in order to be able to access what I feel is the biggest one, which is, yeah, shame, healing shame, you know, and grief, you know, shame and grief. You know, shame sort of being a way for him to express himself more physically. So the heart's more open physically, literally like the chest is softer, you know, because energy is not just getting stuck in the pelvis all the time, but it's allowed to move. But the grief, like that sort of that deep grief, you know, that actually has to come out to allow that energy to move and not always, you know, continually be sort of pulled upon, almost like a little bit of a sinkhole where energy just kind of keeps draining to parts of the body. So from like a movement perspective, and yeah, sort of, you know, you'd see this in yoga for sure, but, you know, even dance or even just like basic articulations of movement in the body that, you know, like that men just haven't habitually learnt, and the structures are blocked down, and there's so much exploration that a man can do with that physical body to allow those bigger emotions to actually come in, because they exist in parts of the body where there isn't language. And I think that's somewhere that, you know, the physical bodied men in our world need to actually be reconnecting with basic movement, you know, basic articulations of their nervous systems, so that they can learn to unkink that circuitry, because it's always controlling them without them knowing. You know, I know that men want to love better and they want to be better in the world, but they've already got this circuitry that almost like lurches forward all the time, and they're often not sure why.
Yeah, that's deeply compassionate. I hear you speaking about that you witness these other men, and you feel their desire to express differently, and then I guess you work with them to help overcome those challenges. And what sort of challenges are you seeing, like other than the emotional side? Like what is the mental mindset that's happening there?
Yeah, there's a few things. You know, I even just experienced one personally this morning. I went to go for a run. So I had a little bit of time away from the family just to have some self-care. And from our kitchen window, I was looking out towards this mountain that's called Mount Jilmatong. And I was like, I'm going to go up there. You know, I'm going to run up there. I'm going to conquer it, right? And not in a like, I was feeling shit about myself, I need to conquer something and have progression. It's just that it's a beautiful place to go, for one. And you know, choosing my challenges feels a lot healthier than constantly having challenges given to me, constantly having just to take those blows. But you know what? I got about 100 meters out of the house and I just started dancing. I had some music in, and my inner feminine, who I actually have a name for, I call her Zara Z.
That's cool.
As a means of developing a relationship with her. I can you know, feel her presence, you know. And her voice was just louder today. You know, it was just this moment of, no, today there's no progress today. There's nothing wrong with conquering and directing that conquering warrior energy, or that sort of king type energy of conquering at all, as long as it's, you know, dealt with mindfully. You know, like a man running up a mountain, physically having to do it himself, is a pretty honorable way of using that energy, rather than like leverage takeover of another company or some crap. But yeah, so listening to my inner feminine, you know, it's this real moment of going, oh, okay, she has a voice too. And there's actually like deep nourishment in there. Like that's actually where self-care is, you know, because that's where the support is, you know. And so, you know, really that sort of happening, that's moving within the body. It's a feeling, you know, it's the nervous system being, you know, I guess sort of used to expanding into more nerve endings and more feeling, more sensitization to like what's actually in the system itself, rather than this being this sort of cognitive and or, you know, conditioned construct that the only way to care for yourself is to give yourself a challenge, right? So it's actually the opposite. It's actually about going into the feminine and actually receiving that love that as a young man you always wanted. But like love occurs as pleasure to a young man. So what does he do? He gets rid of all his energy or he goes finding more energy. So he starts to realize that that energy is actually here. It's literally right in front of him all the time. He's just got to figure out a way to actually, you know, connect with that energy himself inside his physical body, inside the feelings, inside the nervous system, you know. Yeah, so
Brandy, so how do you feel, Brandy, like listening to all this, with your perspective on energy medicine, with what Roscoe was saying?
Yeah, I really feel like there's more dynamic action coming in with the men that are doing the work, and they're having more flexibility, and like they're having like more self-awareness, and they're preconceiving different things and making adjustments. Like it's like they're seeing the foresight, and then they're working on changing things faster than I noticed, like even say back in like 2012, 2015. I'm really seeing the men, like I said, becoming more flexible, more able to adapt and provide structure and like a dynamic action, and like a more open crown chakra. I feel like they're way more expanded, even in the last few years, than I said when I first started reading energy professionally about 7 or 8 years ago. And I can feel that sense of like wanting to like achieve and like take those next steps, and like you said, with that conquering aspect. But I feel like it's more softened now, and less like domination and control, and like like just like pulling in more and more and more. Like they're able to be more fluid and balanced in the masculine and feminine. I'm even seeing more balanced in my masculine and feminine in my 10-year-old. My 10-year-old is like very secure in his own feelings and like expressing himself. But he also, you know, is, you know, acts like a little man and wants to help out and do this stuff and be present. So I'm really grateful to be able to be a mother of boys. And I'm going to be bringing them into more communal spaces and just taking them with me on journeys, because I feel like they're going to have a much better start than I did in my life. And I'm really grateful for that, very deeply.
And do you see them, like, what sort of physical outlets do they have for their like warrior kid type energy? So for me, like a young man is more of a hero energy. You know, they want to swan in and save and win, and but you know, they won't know what to do when they get it. Like, so like a young knight, you know, saves the damsel, but then he's just a hero. He doesn't know a life after that, you know. And then the warrior kind of comes in. So like I've got 3 sons, you know, and they're really boisterous, and they have like so much energy, and they have so much like energy they want to put out, you know, they want to push it out all the time. You know, that turns up in wrestling in our household, or sticks beating cardboard boxes, or even punching in a, you know, a heart connected kind of way. Do you find that they naturally gravitate towards that, or are they being modeled that in their life more? Do you think? Is that, yeah?
Yeah, they do that. They do play really hard. Like I have to find myself, because there's programming, you know, like from they get into the YouTube or something, or they just see things and then they mimic it. But they love, you know, battling with sticks and hitting boxes. And you know, I have a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old, so that age difference, they kind of like do get on each other's nerves periodically. And this is only the 2nd year since their father and I separated after a 14-year marriage. So we're working on a lot of different dynamics and bringing forth other opportunities. But the main thing that I've been doing for them is bringing them out into nature, because they're used to, you know, living on a fairly large parcel of land and like growing a lot of our own food and stuff like that. And I was really like a homesteader. And so a lot has changed. And so I have to take them to a variety of different places in nature for them to get that energy out and run and swim and play and catch frogs and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Because I think that's what men still need.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you know, and together, you know, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so on target. I just got 6 hours off the river, whitewater kayaking with these, there were 4 men and 4 women, but and it was just pristine, beautiful, and it was a playful energy. It was times it was challenging. We were very supportive with each other. And there was this sense of the healed masculine, and it goes into also, I think, what is work, and what is sexual experience. There is this opportunity to be playful with it. There is this opportunity through impeccable heart to actually, if there's enough trust, if this core of I am connected with source and I am generating from the inside out this joyous celebration, this opportunity to turn what would be fearful or arduous or a place of turmoil in work or sex into a joyous celebration. It's like this transformation that takes place, this transformation of a healed masculine and feminine coming together. And it's in this place of generating healthy masculine energy. It's like, yeah, play hard, come into this place of intense sexual energy, and within the context of loving awareness, within the context of a joyous celebration of life, because my gosh, how precious is every moment.
Yeah, man, I feel you there.
So precious.
Yeah.
I would love to also, thanks guys for sharing all that. I would love to also bring in some ideas, like we can talk about like the executive function of the masculine. So I feel like that's something that a lot of men or fathers would love to feel more of. And it's not just about the physical, like the physical is the bedrock and his foundation, but then his ability, as Brandy was mentioning, like to have foresight and then execute, and then to actually then see the social dynamic, like as his ideas melt into that big pot together with other fathers and other men, so that there's actually a creation, a co-creation that's larger than he going on with his brothers.
That is such intense healing, because Brand, you were sharing about the crown chakra, and I could just see the king with his crown on. But how many kings have been brokenhearted because they feel like there's this hierarchical aspect going on in their kingdom, and there's this loneliness because the connection's not taking place. It's like, I'm in charge. Well, what if it's the co-creation? What if this executive function can be a function of the round table, of this place of power with rather than power over. The executive place of weaving, light weavers, of weaving reality so that I can be on top of my game. Can be connected through crown chakra. I can be connected with my heart. My gut can be healthy. I can be connected with the earth and come into a place with each one of you in this panel, in this circle this evening, and co-create rather than having to feel that I'm in charge or I have to be in charge. Rather, I am I'm connected with and sharing my light with you, and you're sharing your light with me, and then there's this powerful co-creation taking place. It almost goes beyond words, because what I say sounds very simplistic, and yet I know still for myself and many, it's not easy. It's not easy to pull it off, but to pull it off, this co-creativeness in this powerful place in our society today, I think it's really what the world's asking for.
Thank you. Yeah, I love coming together, and I feel like I'll just mention Roscoe before you keep going. That energetically, like this is what I focus on a lot, is for people's soul alignment to come in, drop into the physical, and shine through their solar self. And then for my dream is that for people to see how that's happening in each one of us. And so when we look at each other, we're also seeing a fully embodied soul self, and we're able to see that in everyone we're witnessing and engaging with. And that opens up a different relational space, like by doing that. Just as and thank you for describing it so well, Will, with the embodied aspect of it there.
Well, that relational space is and co-creation, like for me, from my perspective, is so key, you know, because we're talking about how these traumas essentially were formed in relationship. They're also healed in relationship. But like, you know, true acceptance includes everything on the spectrum of, you know, the feminine bringing every emotion that she's feeling, you know. So for me, the gift from the feminine at the moment is to actually show the rage, you know, like in feminine identified beings, that literally has to be shown from the eyes, and there has to be sound, and there has to be this embodiment of the pain that they're experiencing. Otherwise, that sort of executive function, that higher self for the masculine, is not going to come in, because it's not going to pay attention. It's like, well, it's fine, they're not really complaining, to use a sort of old school blokey language, you know. It's just like, it's quite simple, you know, because it's in us and it's happening right in front of us all the time, and we can artistically tussle with it. So the masculine can also evoke a more revealing from the feminine, like in a physical sense. So relationship with like a heterosexual couple, you know, if a man is able to like see that his feminine partner is in pain, and she's also willing to reveal it to him without words, like reveal the depth of her heart, and just be like my life is not okay because of these things that are happening around me, not from a incapable place, but from like almost like a sexual gifting place. Because for a masculine bodied man, when a woman reveals anything, it occurs as pleasure. It's like, yeah, wow, I love that sadness, or I want to lick that grief, or let's make love to your rage, you know. That's inspiring to the masculine. So that helps to, you know, for him to not only bring the energy up from the lower part of his body, but it helps bring energy in, you know, because it almost inspires him to find his purpose. Because men will do anything for pussy, right? They'll do, specifically what I mean by that, it's a crude word in some way, but what I mean by that is they'll do anything for the range of the feminine, you know, like a waterfall, right? A naked woman, a person dancing in their feminine, whoa, you know, like that draws the masculine in to see that there's something sacred and there's something to be loved there. Because again, if they get to tussle with it in a way that's actually physical, it's pleasurable, and that occurs as love, you know, for the masculine.
So what you're saying is that he, like the man, as a woman opens like and shares all of her feelings and all of her range, then that will inspire the masculine to respond to her needs.
Yeah, well, it gets his attention, right? You know, it's like the masculine is such a witness, you know, and if he's gone through like his grief in particular, then he'll see that eruption in grief in her and see it as like arousing. rather than making the grief wrong and putting another system in place to cover it up. Yeah.
So you mean like arousing to his essence, like it on that core level, like as a
all of
not
it,
just sexual, yeah.
All of it. His cock, his stomach, his heart, his throat, his being. Like it just gets his attention. It deepens his breath. You know, it calls in the right type of saving, not that heroic saving, but like the warrior. I'll stand here with you. You know. So yeah, when I hear of co-creation, I feel like there's evoking and tussling that needs to go on, not only just in relationships in sort of a microcosm, but in a more macro sense as well. But if we're doing it personally, one-to-one, together, within our own bodies, as well as in relating with others, then that's the little ripple, or that's the weave that you speak of in a, you know, it's starting in a very self-ownership way, because I feel like we don't always have the grace to start a relationship having healed past lineage. You know, we start these relationships with these wounds alive, and we often have so much lust and fun in these relationships early on because of that wound. And we could work with that artistically, because we're never fully going to get rid of it, but there is a place there that this co-creation energy could actually be really, like that fire can really be stoked, you know. So in my own relationship with my wife, you know, like it was completely about validation. It was completely about, you know, our genitals. It was completely about me not feeling enough in my life and her not having enough attention. And it completely started from codependence. All right. But we have like the most beautiful, most empowered, most spiritual, intimate relationship I've ever experienced, because that's allowed to be there, you know, and then because that's allowed to be there, that's healed. Like it's in Tantra, there's a saying of like, what you touch deeply dissolves, you know. So it's almost like giving permission for aspects of the wound to be there, you know, and sometimes that allows for that inspiration to move up through the stomach and up into the heart. You know, it inspires the masculine to also be receiving, you know, areas where, you know, God is that he may not have thought of.
Yeah, so how do you feel that men can turn those downloads into like responsible authority and effective action making and planning with other men? Like when they receive those gifts, what's the process then to move forward like that?
Well, I love that word, like responsibility, you know, and like, you know, if I sort of brought up like relationships and sexuality, you know, sexuality, you know, I think of like sovereignty, you know, personal sovereignty, and it's sovereignty and responsibility, you know. So we're just like, we basically just have like a responsibility with the energy that arises. And within the context of other men, it's just like, well, every man can share in that energy. There's no competitiveness around it. You know, it's like, here, brother, come up here with me, as opposed to, look at me, I'm up here. This energy is all for me. So there's a certain responsibility of sharing that energy, of not so much like calling a man out on his shit. Like sometimes that's appropriate, but, you know, letting him see on your physical body what the energy is that's moving, and that's something that he has desire for. Like it's got to appeal, otherwise there's not going to be a step in that direction.
Yeah, so men look to other men and to be inspired by how to be just more of the man that they can be.
Yeah, well, I think, Will, you touched on it something before. There was something you were describing about the heart, and then earlier on you were talking about that bear hug. So it's approaching other men with full acceptance of all their stuff as well. You know, so if one man is not fully accepting everything and being fully responsible for everything that he's got going on in his life, he's not going to have love and just service-based responsibility for another man, because he'll only meet at the level that he's evolved to be in himself. He'll only meet that in another man in its equal. So if he's disowning some of his rage, or if he's disowning some of his like perversions, or if he's disowning some of his lust, then he's not going to have love and acceptance for another man's lust. So there's a certain invitation there, but there's still a back end to the invitation. Otherwise, it may just be another projection.
It's powerful to be in nature with other men in a council circle, and men are talking about relationship with women, relationship with family. They're talking about sex. They're talking about work. They're talking about their own shame. They're talking about, and there's this place there for understanding about the friction that takes place, and how this friction is an aspect of creation, how this occurs in nature, how the powerful elements come together and reshape and mold, and there's this process, and it's the process, I call it the God process, but it's generating, organizing, and disintegrating. And every disintegration leads to a higher integration. And so it is that there is an opportunity to create a space where men can call forth other men into this place of impeccable heart. And it's strong, it's dynamic, and it's a call to attention, and yet it's balanced, and it oftentimes by a playfulness, which is really unique. I mean, it's unique the way that happens. And if you watch nature is, the elk are in rutting season, and they're just like this, and this. And then there's another time in the season, another season that takes place where they're just all out in the field together playing and hopping around, but it goes through cycles, and then there's natural cycles. And so, I mean, Brandy, when you were sharing about, getting your boys out into nature, it's just like, yeah, what an incredible teacher. We see so much of how masculine and feminine balance in natural places. And Roscoe, when you were sharing about, embracing, creating this space, I mean, this is my perception of what you were sharing of this place for lust and for codependency and for, what could be judged as, okay, these are the inadequacies of a relationship. And yet at the same time, it's what so often draw two people together.
Yeah. And
so to create a loving awareness that can embrace everything that comes its way, all of the rage and the grief and shame, pain, this loving awareness, this place of compassion, this place of doing compassion. Do whatever it takes to heal. And I mean, whatever it takes to heal. Compassion, to go the distance. That's powerful. That's the power to me of actually healing the father wound, is coming into this place of impeccable heart and compassion, and understanding that in nature, there's always going to be the friction. It's really what makes the world go around.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And you also mentioned like calling to attention, like men call each other to attention. which is something I haven't really heard expressed like that. Like, that is that magnetic dynamism that can happen in a group of men. And so that also brings through opportunities for that moment of like divine inspiration to actually strike, like within a group of men like that.
Yeah, it's really powerful because there's nothing expected from you. You know, you might have this habitual kink in your nervous system to save, you know, women. I know I've had that at times, you know, wanting to save my mother in other women. And when I'm around other men, that's just not online. So there's no distraction of this weird kink in my nervous system to save a woman who doesn't need saving, you know? And so it means that there's more available to share, you know, because there's less distortion or white noise in the nervous system. And I guess that's
unless the man has like a really big distortion with other men.
Of course, and it's all possible. Yeah. Yeah, but I'd offer that, you know, often if a man is at the place of even just being interested about a men's group, and hanging out with other men one-to-one, then he's probably unfolded a certain level of his own intimacy with other men already, or is ready. I see a lot of men that just don't ever get involved with men's groups. It's just because they're flat out not ready. They would be, of course, fine once they were there, but they're not curious yet. They're not seeking that little white rabbit to follow. So there's a certain trust when men are getting together in a men's group, because you can feel on them that they're actually there for the right reasons. And I'm sure there's anomalies, but in my experience with men's groups, that's what I've noticed.
So how would you imagine then drawing in more of men who have that huge resistance to gathering with other men?
Well, for me, it's just you mentioned it earlier. It's just a basic notion of brotherhood. Every man's welcome. You know, it's like, here, brother, up here with me. You know, it's everything that Will was saying about compassion. It's just compassion. You know, so it starts with yourself. If you have compassion for yourself, then it's about men actually reaching out to other men that aren't, in Australia we would call them your mates, or maybe in America it's your buddy or something like that. They can definitely be that, but brotherhood is a different sacred space. It's just an understanding. So it's about feeling, you know, who are the brothers in your community, and actually picking up the phone and just seeing how they're going that day. It's actually really simple stuff, but it often doesn't happen because of the narratives or the inability to navigate their own lives. They may not have unfolded it enough to feel like they've got the energy even just to reach out to other people.
Yeah, I'd like to also ask you, sorry, Will, but maybe you guys could both answer, but what's the difference between going to the pub with your mates and talking about some things, and then going into a conscious brotherhood space and actually sharing there?
Well, for me, it's consciousness. So when it's in a sacred space, it's in a sacred space. And it's with full intention. And backing up just a tad, there is also how can men be invited into growing with other men on a wisdom path. And I know for me, what one powerful experience was to hear the testimony of women and how their relationship had changed with men who had been in the sacred conscious council circle with other men. It's amazing to hear a woman say, this is the change that I've seen in my man's life. And I don't know exactly how you do what you do, and I don't need to know, but I know what a difference it's made in our relationship. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, there is huge dynamic change in my being heard. And there's a huge dynamic change in terms of just how I feel attracted to my man, because he is holding an energy that he hasn't held in a long time. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
It goes beyond words. It's not, there's, however, I have found that actually women can describe it even better than men can. Because it takes place in us. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Well, yeah, this feeling, Will, like this is the feeling that we were craving from our fathers. Full acceptance, you know, no matter what choices we made. I've been really fortunate that, you know, my relationship with my father is, he's been super supportive of my choices. He's also made sure that I've felt appropriately the impact of my poor choices. My mother wound would say, like, would you know, often sort of sabotage the receptivity that I had to my father. So I had like a bit of a distorted understanding of like his love for me. But anyway, my experience of men's groups and what you're speaking about there, how lovely it is it actually, for me personally, and I hear this from a lot of other men, it feels exactly like what they wanted to experience from their father. So in a way, it gives us a place to reconnect with the father as a brotherhood.
Yes.
There's that linking of arms in a conscious way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thanks, guys.
Operation and sacred reciprocity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And look, one thing I will say, I'll often, like, I have a bent on sexual mastery, you know, because I feel there's so much energy and life force that we can wield there. But a real game changer for me in terms of my availability for other men was actually retaining semen. You know, my creative energy, you know, instead of losing it somewhere, but, you know, learning to actually just cycle that around my body. You know, it's probably been one of the biggest things for actually being able to sit there and be available for another man. Prior to that, there may have been like a distraction or a frustration or a feeling like he's in the way, or a competitiveness, or some kind of white noise on the nervous system, you know. And I feel like that may also help a lot of men with the stigma of men's work. You know, they seem to have like sometimes some homophobic, well, it's not just men hugging in the woods, is it, type mentality. But that's often the man who ejaculates a lot who says that, you know, because there's so much sexual shame and there's so much releasing of his seed that he's never creating anything in his life because it's just washing down the drain or going into a Kleenex tissue or whatever happens.
It's very interesting. Yeah. I concur. I mean, it's within the safe and intimate space of men's counsel and circles, I came into this place to realize, it dawned on me all of a sudden, it's like, I've been doing these things my whole life. I've been really working on all this for a long, long time. And years ago, I started this practice of semen retention, which was really, you know, and so many partners did not understand. I mean, it was just like women who were like, I don't get it. And there were other men that, you know, I don't get it. When I finally, you know, came into a circle, I felt, of more mature men on the wisdom path, all of a sudden, I actually met, you know, other men who were talking about semen retention, which was like, wow, okay, I'm not alone in the wilderness. It's like, this really does work. And and there's so much more. And at the same time, that was definitely an aspect, you know, for me, I came to it through Kundalini yoga. And so there was this yogic aspect of it, which is, you know, goes way back in terms of, you know, really learning how to cultivate spiritual energy. And so this cultivation that takes place, it's this story that's told. I know Yogi Bhajan's one of the ones, but you know, I mean, the stag's running through the woods and he's going crazy because there's this smell and he's got to have it, and whatever it is, he'll fight to get it. And he runs until finally his heart, and he falls to the ground in total exhaustion, and all of a sudden realizes that the smell is coming from between his own legs. Okay, so it's this musk, it's the scent, you know, and so it's this scent. And for men to understand their own energy, you know, that this energy of the seed, and it's in sacred sexuality. I mean, that's the other, as we mature as men and we become fathers to our sons, you know, we can, and I say to our sons, but it's also to our daughters, because when we share this with our sons, we're sharing it with our daughters, because if you have sons and daughters, the daughters are paying attention to what fathers are doing with the sons. And so there is this aspect of what is sacred sexuality, and how to treat a woman, and to be in this place of cultivating and raising the energy. So rather than, you know, I mentioned this from my other ones, but it's like the whole Hollywood romance thing. It's rather than getting drunk and falling in love and being unconscious with this whole process, is actually consciously co-creating and designing relationship so two people can rise in love rather than going unconscious and fall. And so, yeah, it can be so beautiful. And more and more, I believe, because of discussions like this, I mean, this is the other aspect of it, is that, you know, how to men feel drawn into being part of a men's council in a circle is through discussions just like the one we're having. I mean, this is actually a part of why we're here and what we're doing right now, is holding the space for the healing of the father wound and for the coming together, the beautiful coming together of the masculine and the feminine. It's like as nature intended.
Yeah, I think that's that deep craving that is, I sense in many women, is that desire to be met by men and to have that union, just where we're actually merged and able to receive merging, as opposed to he's doing something to me or I'm doing something to him, and all of those ways that we try to relate to each other and we just fall short. And I know that when you guys are speaking about the semen retention, I feel like that is such a strong practice for men to be able to hold their presence and be able to hold their own mind in alignment with their bodies, so that it's like when they might be ejaculating a lot, it's their mental capacities being lost through that as well. And so that's that executive function of being able to then create something more than themselves. I know for my practicing, I work with like blood mysteries. So for me, it's been over the last 9 years or so, I've been working with seeding my blood to the earth in creative ways. So it's not just about throwing it away. It's about feeling that texture of blood and earth and feeling which trees and which plants call to me, and that ongoing relationship of creation with the planet. And I've heard men speaking about offering their semen also to plants and to their garden and to earth. And I think that that's an energetic connection there that is very empowering, I would imagine, for men as well, to help them to regain a spiritual grounding and to be able to sense themselves in the world more. create more sensitivity like that with the world, they're actually feeling that seed connection.
Yeah, well, I mean, nothing can hide in eros. I literally saw that on an Instagram post this week. And it's just exactly what I've seen and experienced. It's you know, how a man takes off his shoe is who he is as a person. You know, like, you know, but even like sexually, like you get the depth of everything that he is, you know. So if he's able to bring alignment to his head, his throat, his heart, his solar plexus, his belly, and his cock, and the room that he's in and the room that's outside of him that he's in when he's experiencing his sexuality, you know, that's how he'll actually be in the world. You know, it's just called integrity. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's this bliss state that comes with orgasm, and it is creation. It is this connection, and to raise the energy and with self and with partner, and to raise this energy into clearing the chakras and creating this flow. And this creation is so powerful and so beautiful, and to do it with intention. And so if there's co-creation and design, whether it's a self co-creation and design or with partner, it's multiplied in terms of creating the manifestation. And what so many men share in counsel, and something that I personally have really worked with transforming, is this the skewed way that pornography works in terms of sucking energy out. And I'm not trying to, you know, be in judgment or make it wrong. I'm just saying there is this loss of energy that takes place that's not necessary. And so it's like when man orgasms, and most men ejaculate externally when they orgasm, there's this, it's almost like getting hooked into and having energy sucked out of, it's very damaging. And so to be able to come out of those hooks and to get released, and to come back into a place of self-empowerment, and come back into a place of designing, coming out of programming and designing one's own life, designing one's own future, doing that in a co-creative way with a partner, and to do that through sacred sexuality, moving more into the tantric field. That's so powerful. What if through rites of passage, boys who are becoming men could understand the secrets of this, how this creative orgasmic state is so powerful in creating beauty in the world. And that's what I mean by not being in judgment of pornography, because that kind of holds it all in place. Oh, now we go back into the shame cycle. But rather than, there's other choices. And so when you really feel the power of this, when you feel the liberation of it, of coming into integrity, the integrity Roscoe was talking about, integrity on the inside and and what's happening on the outside, integrity throughout the body, it's like, then it's so easy, much easier to release the addiction, to come out of the judgment, and to come into a place of power. And I feel like for so many men, this is such a struggle. It's such an incredible struggle. But to know other men who have, found the delight and the joy and the huge amount of beautiful energy that takes place from both tension, from both semen retention and from setting an attention before orgasm and allowing the orgasm to bring that creation into manifestation. It's like, what a powerful energy. It's like, oh my gosh, this is here we go again, ready for takeoff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Brandy, I would just feel like this is the time for you to step in and talk about some of your experiences and your perspective on that energy drain that people are experiencing from their sexuality, and how then that affects their ability to be in that king vibration.
Absolutely. Well, as you were speaking, I was thinking of some, sacred symbolism, and as you're going like this, I'm seeing that sideways figure eight, that infinity symbol, that electromagnetic field of our heart has that. But I'm also seeing that cyclical nature of the Ouroboros, which is the 2D shape of the yin and the yang, so masculine and feminine energy, but then also spinning that yin and yang to form the 3-dimensional toroidal fields. And so with men and women more in fear state from patterns, from programming, from different things that's happening in the world, that heart field is much smaller. And when we can really open up that 8th chakra and expand that toroidal field within and around us, we're able to move the energy, that beautiful spiritual silver and spiritual golden energy, move it up from the base of the spine of that Ouroboros, that sleeping serpent, like 3.14 times high, that it's wrapped around the base of the spine. I'm seeing that caduceus. So, once those chakras are clear, those energy centers are clear, and that those wheels of light are beginning to spin, and your endocrine system is becoming more and more balanced throughout practice, you're raising the energy up through the Ida and the Pingala, crossing through all of those chakras to come into that pituitary gland, where those serpentine drops, or those sacred union energy, can then bathe and revitalize the organs and strengthen the nervous system by strengthening the aura, which then your cells can physically regenerate and renew faster and through your sleep cycle. So you're retaining more of your energy. You don't have the holes, rips, leaks, and tears in your aura. And then, speaking of the sexual energy, it's definitely been something that, I've been tapping into for a very long time. Even into my teens, I started recognizing the different energies and things. And, I was patterned and programmed with that Hollywood dramatization. And I've spent, at least a decade deprogramming from that stuff. It's like you get aroused by so many things, but then there's that shame. It's like you get aroused by other people and you're like, oh, you want to like feel into yourself and like feel good into that. But we don't always know who is feeling us when that's happening. And so we need to have integrity with what we're projecting out. Because I've had experiences of people having sexual energy siphoning, demonic, shame, guilt, lies, attachment, delusion, illusion, to where I personally had a man that was practicing tantric sexual meditations and bringing me into it. And I was having up to 10 orgasms a day without being touched. And I didn't know exactly why that started or how to stop it, but I had to go into deep prayer to kind of like get it to slow down, because I've had several Kundalini awakenings. And this one in particular, I would be driving down the road and I was like go into that full movement in my energy field. And then, ultimately I was able to, find out where that was coming from and talk to that person about that. And it was pretty intense because I was emotionally disturbed for a couple of months after that happened. And it took me a while to build my confidence back up after experiencing something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you
Yeah,
found like that was a inauthentic use of that energy.
Well, the thing is that it feels really good in the beginning. It's like, ooh, there's a sacred connection. There's this, being that I'm connected with on a spiritual level or a soul level, but not necessarily knowing the person's intentions behind all of that. Yeah, so it was quite intense. And so like, it was really interesting to me that it actually happened, because I could only sleep 1 to 4 hours a night. Sometimes I was up all hours of the night from that increased energy that was happening. It was happening from other things too. It wasn't just this one person. I mean, there was other things that were causing my energies to awaken in a lot of different ways. And I could barely even eat at times. And so like, it made me really, really realize, because I had been talking about it for years. I'd been talking about misuse of energy and communication and everything. And so for me to actually witness it and experience it firsthand, like I knew the depth of, the mind control programming or the manipulation and control and the co-opting of feminine and masculine energies. Because like I said, it felt good in the beginning until I couldn't control it. And I was feeling like I was having sex without anybody there in the room. And so, like I said, it starts off like it's fun in games and play, like, oh, meet me in meditation tonight or whatever, to like I said, feeling like drained and like my energy had been co-opted. And it's interesting because I'm clairaudient, and so I started hearing messages from spirit as a teenager. 17 to 19, it really came online for me, and I'm 36 now. And so there's just a lot of things we need to understand about who we are, what we're capable of, what we can do, and then have forgiveness and compassion for those things that we experience, because obviously, like, I opened up to it on some level. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when we're feeling these energy drains and when we're recognizing that's happening, it's a strong call to come back to personal sovereignty and to do that on an energetic level, but not just a mental decision. It's like you then have to feel everything change and shift in your biofield, and the unhooks to happen from the sacral chakra, from the root chakra, and then you feel clear again. Then mentally you're clear again. So whether it's a distortion from pornography or from someone else sending you energy that is not necessarily in your highest good, or whether it's a distortion in from your own decision making, it's important to understand that there is clarity that you can get to on the other side of that healing, and to come through that. And I know that, yeah, Brandy, I know your healing work is often about that, like working with people's distortions and helping them to shift that, release and dissolve all those patternings. And then I see that it comes back to our theme of co-creative energy. So if somebody is addictive or being energy drained and attacked or dragged on, or there's a multitude of ways that we can be compromised, their co-creative force becomes much less. And then if that's happening to, say, 20,000 people out of in our vicinity, there's like a multitude of ways that all those distortions and drains are affecting even people who are not actively in that distorted pattern themselves. So there's like a much lowering of consciousness and ability to co-create together. So that's something that I feel very strongly is about how do we get back to that positive co-creative place where everyone, or as many people as possible, are feeling whole, are feeling present, are feeling masterful in their creativity and their root presence, just who they are.
Yeah. Do you mind if I speak?
Oh yeah, please.
Yeah. I hear in that again, responsibility again, like that personal responsibility. But in terms of that co-creative energy with someone else, particularly if it's if it's verbally and it's opening up some vulnerable dialogue, or if it's physically and it's opening up some new ranges in the body, or if it's through the heart and it's opening up more courage, or if it's through sexual activity and it's actually just like opening someone to God, particularly a feminine being, like that responsibility like continues beyond, like there's a certain care of that creative energy, that if a feminine being is really opened up and like really allowed, and that penetrative energy has been there, and then that penetrative energy is removed, and it was part of the energy that allowed her to maybe go further than she could herself in terms of openness, like nervous system kind of almost being allowed to open to oblivion, then that responsibility from the masculine to actually continue presence after the fact is like from what I see, is like such a basic fundamental step in understanding and still bearing witness to the consequences of opening up that energy. It's not just to be sort of opened and left. I'm sure you two can maybe sort of speak to those feelings. I know a lot of women sort of call it like dick fog or something, but really just there's something bigger that's been opened up, and it's possibly allowing other energies to come in that aren't welcome, or it's possibly creating like another kink in the nervous system, maybe even more trauma.
Well,
if
I
it's
think
not held appropriately.
That speaks to like the masculine, like everything that we've been speaking about, healing the masculine, healing that lineage vibration, like men not being able to understand what a lineage is in the first place, so that when they're going out and having these like one-off experiences, and then they think that that's done, one and done or something. There's nothing lineagey about that. There's no building on a lineage that's happening, and especially not a spiritual lineage, like with his core essence or anything like that. So that's like, I think that's a way that men are fooling themselves into having those experiences, and allowing themselves to be drawn into that patterning, whereas they're not prioritizing that the stronger lineage, like that can come through them, and actually building quality into that. And that's a decision, I guess, that the masculine has to make. But as we know, talking on the father wound, if men are wounded in their father lineage, or their ability to connect with source and therefore experience the sense of lineage, then they may not, they might be reacting and acting from that place and don't know a different way, or a way that's going to be more harmonious and allow him to open and be becoming more of a man, like stepping in more and more into his manhood. And when it comes to like energy drains, I think that it's a deep issue for young men, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this topic, is just to see more men have awareness that not to lose their life force essence, not to be giving it away, not to be allowing their minds to be chopped up and disseminated with their energetic patterns, and then they're just there to be taken on board to someone else's plan and someone else's program, because they're unable to hold their center. So I feel very strongly about that.
I think one of the aspects of healed father energy is mentoring. And I think what mentoring is about is one aspect of mentoring is helping to both be clear about what is being responsible, and also asking the question in terms of, this is your life, what would you like to have happen? And take a look at the bigger picture, and take a look at, you know, what kind of man do you want to be? And what is your future? And what is your intention? So to set the intention, and to set the intention in such a way that you can bounce it off of the mentor and say, well, I think this is the kind of man I'd like to be, and this is the kind of life I'd like to have, and to get some feedback, and to hear some wisdom. And I think, as I've expressed many times, I think we've left the elders out of our circles to disadvantage in our culture. And I guess I'm talking primarily about my own personal take on American culture, because I think that the elders, to mentor young men through this process of taking responsibility and figure out who they want to be as men, and how they would like to design their lives. And then in this process of, how do you do design? How do you do co-creation? And how do you co-create with a partner? And sometimes it's as simple as, okay, I'm going to sit down with my fiance, and we're going to do a dream board, and we're going to talk about, this is how we want to unfold, and perhaps how we want family, you know. And I know I'm bringing it more into just a scenario, but the scenario is for men to be able to have men as mentors, and ideally mentors who are elders on a wisdom path, so that they can take a look at the ancestry. They can take a look at, in this lifetime, you have an opportunity to not only heal yourself, not only set a course, not only create something incredibly strong and beautiful in a single lifetime. What you're doing will also heal ancestors, and it will also create a patterning for future generations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the lineage that we're working to restore through the father wound, through addressing that father wound.
Precisely.
And, I was really initiated more deeply into healing lineages through the Munaiki rites. And so I had an opportunity to meet with the Karo shaman, the High Andes, and the Peruvian culture. They came to Rhinebeck down by New York City at Omega Institute last year. And I was able to sit with Dr. Alberto Vilodo and his wife, Marcela Lobos. And so after having received those 9 shamanic rites of passage back in 2015, it was really intense, because my mentor, my teacher at the time, didn't know what dates that she was picking. And so she had chosen full moon in Scorpio, my father's birthday, my mother's anniversary, and then my mother's birthday. And so it was almost like it was, you know, perfect divine alignment and timing for me to receive those 9 shamanic rites. And then I was able to initiate that rite of passage and bear hug my father later that year. Actually, it was Thanksgiving at my brother's. And after I gave him the healer's rites from that Muneki, which in Quechua means I love you, and it's been such a deep transformational healing for me because he looked back at me. He would have turned 75 this year, and on May 17th, and he looked at me with such a surprise, and because he had seen a light, and he said, I've never felt a power within the core of my being in my entire life than I felt when you were giving me that blessing and that right. And so I was able to start really healing my father lineage and father wounds by having that compassion to share my energy and all of the work that I've done in this lifetime with my biological father, even though there was such great separation and broken family from a young age. So to be able to bring that to fruition, and then to meet the Karo shaman last year, I was kind of like thinking to myself what they said when they came out, what we were supposed to say when they came out on the stage. And the medical anthropologist, Dr. Vilodo, had said they're going to come out and say, Ayu Yanchu. And then the response is Ayu Yami in Quechua. And to me, I heard, I really want you. Are you yummy? And I lost it. And I was like, that's a divine play on words and on language, where like my channel was on kind of like a tragedy or a drama, decades ago. And then once I came more into my awakening, I was able to change that channel and hone that frequency into a divine comedy, where I was able to go from feeling so serious and so like rigid and stuck in certain mindsets, really being liberated and just finding like the laughter and the innocence and the succulence and the juiciness of life, of being like, what does that mean in Quechua? Ayu Yanchu. It means, are we well? And so they believe that if one person isn't well, then none of us are well. And so the response, Ayu Yami, is we are well. I just thought it was kind of funny too, to hear that in a different language, but then hear it in this like cute little, like divine, sexy, like to the universe, we are well, I want you, kind of a thing.
I just love that you brought in the lineage of the Quechua, because I can feel the people that out there that are holding this space for us all the time, for us all to come to back into lineage and back into coherency together as a human family. And it's just a great reminder of the spiritual magnitude of what some of the earth peoples hold for us, for all these billions of new souls that have come here to this planet to learn about these things, these exact experiences.
Yeah, and Lake Titicaca in Peru there, Cusco is the main area, but I always thought that name was funny. That's the sacral chakra of the planet. Like Cusco means navel of the world, and that umbilicus, like where we were connected to our mother. It's like, can we reconnect that spiritual umbilical cord to our mother energy, but also to our father energy? Because without the father, we wouldn't have had that seed of creation to be perpetuated.
I just have to say that right now, in this very moment, I am in joyous celebration. This is just putting me in a place of joy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am happy.
Thank you.
It's cool, man.
Yeah, I'm feeling really full-bodied now that like we've gone from Roscoe to Brandy, and I think that there's such a beautiful resonance there between that range, what we're all talking about and bringing in here. And I'm starting to feel like we have approached our journey today and we have taken it. Is there anything else you guys want to bring in to the pot before we go our separate ways? I know the one thing I've been thinking about since Will mentioned it was the GOD breakdown. So the generative principle, the organizational principle, and then the dissemination. Was that right?
Disintegration.
Disintegration.
However, here it is, and every disintegration creates a higher integration, and it comes right back to generating again. So it's a circle. It's the toroidal shape. It's
yeah. So what I took from that was that where people might be experiencing a lot of distortions in that middle phase, which is the organizational aspect. So they might be generating, men might be generating energy, but then the organizational aspect might become injured in some way. And so then there's no ability to keep moving through and generating powerfully. So that's something that I really received from that, and as an understanding or an witnessing.
And the disintegration, that is also a part of taking responsibility, because it has to do with letting go of what it's taught, in evolving spiritually, is letting go of what's, no longer serves you. And I also believe that when you're healing in the generational patterns, there is this honoring, and at the same time, what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine. And so there's this process that you go through with your for example, your birth father, your birth mother. When the healing process takes place, eventually there's this place of coming back into this healthy differentiation, this sovereignty, where it's, I honor you, and what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine. And to say yes to life, say yes to now generating, organizing, disintegrating with a plan. It's like, okay, let's co-create, let's design, let's make it happen.
Yeah, and I think that while the lineage aspect is really where a lot of the sacred depth of it's all going to come from, moment to moment, it's just loving without history too. It's another piece that I hear, because we're all carrying that baggage. And as I said earlier, we don't have the luxury of meeting someone in relationship or engaging with the world, because we're always in relationship with something all the time, being fully sorted, and so bringing your love into any moment that that is free from some of the narrative or even from some of the lineage at times, that it's just love and it's just right now. Without any of the weight or the narratives that can be from behind it, like historically powerful or otherwise, or historically damaging. Like love breathes in every moment, eternity breathes in every moment. And so it's that receptivity and that availability to live.
Men come into a circle and powerfully sit in silence and become present in the moment.
Brandy, do you have anything else you want to add for us?
Well, I really just want to thank the men that are here on the call, and then also those watching. Roscoe, well, thank you so much for everything that I've received and will continue to integrate. And then I also want to thank our beloved Christine for co-creating and organizing the Light Weavers group and these Father Wound calls. And we look forward to sharing more about this dynamic reciprocity and healing and liberating ourselves from within the core, and let it ripple out and eventually touch all of the waters of the world that will continue to be recycled for all of the generations to come. We can choose in every moment what we're going to hold within our being, what we're going to project or emanate from our presence. And so from my heart to all of yours and those watching, those that were live and those on the replay.
I can't wait to go and move through some energy and integrate some of this.
So rich, so many gifts. Thank each one of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Brandy.